Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Lisa Elvin Staltari, and I'm a genealogist and a passionate traveler. Over the last several years, I have been featuring les filles du roi et les filles mariées. Today, we are focusing on les filles mariées. I can't wait to tell you the stories of these remarkable women. Now, we have about 262 filles mariées, and we are on episode 60. I think it is 62 this episode. So we've come a long way, but we've got a long way to go. But before we begin, let me show you ways you can support the channel. The first three keep you in the know. Subscribe, like, and notify. The next are ways to help the channel grow. We have outside platforms called Coffee and Patreon. We also have the PayPal button on my Have Roots Will Travel website. And there's also a super thanks on YouTube as well. All of these help the channel grow and reach more people. Thank you so much to all of you who have done so thus far. And let's get started. So les filles mariées were a group of women between 1634 and 1662 who came to New France before the arrival of les filles du roi. And the reason they came was basically to populate the country. It wasn't a program per se. They didn't get paid. Most of the time, their passages were paid by either a church or a family member. They came alone to some degree, maybe with 2 or 3 other people, but it certainly was not a fully formed program. So these women who came, to me, they are the true pioneers and are incredible in terms of being the founding grandmothers of Quebec. They came where no one had been before. And you can see that date, 1634. You can see that that was probably one of the earliest times that a woman could come to Quebec. It had just been retaken over by France. So for them to come into that wilderness, can you imagine? And we are going to talk about one of these stories today. So let's have a look at episode 62 and see who our fille mariée is. So our fille mariée, episode 62, is Françoise Benard. And she comes to us from a viewer request. So I'm very happy to do this one. I did not have her in my files, so it was a pleasure to get Françoise. And what a life. Let's have a look. Françoise was born in 1630 in the commune of Vouvray-sur-Loire. It is part of the Pays de la Loire region, and inside of that region, the département is Sarthe. It is now known as Montreal-sur-Loire because in 2016 it merged into a new commune with several others. That's something I've seen with France. They constantly are reinventing themselves. Her parents were Pierre Benard and Catherine Rivray. There's about 775 people that live here now. But what this region is really known for is obviously it's wine. And it's the capital of the world of Chenin Blanc, which is a type of Pinot wine. And so obviously this is what this area is known for. When I was researching, I kept looking at all the wine blogs. It was very fascinating. And the church that she would have been baptized in, Saint Martin, has been around since before the 12th century, but this particular church was built in the 12th century. So this would have been where Françoise would have been baptized. We believe that Françoise would come to New France sometime in 1655. So the groom that she selected and who selected her was Marin, Januel de La Chapelle. He was born about 1630 in La Chapelle, Montauban, in France. His parents were Robert Janot and Jeanne de Pienne. Now you can see by the maps that Hauts-de-France is right up there, about as north as you can get. And inside of that, the département Aisne is where this little commune is located. There's about 200 people that live there now. L'église de la Nativité de la Sainte Vierge is the church that he would have been baptized in. It is the Church of the Virgin. Now, his particular is part of the wine producers in this area, and it produces about 95% of the Pinot grapes, and the rest are Chardonnay as well. So I think it's kind of like when you see it, you think, wow, it's so green and so, absolutely rich with nature, and so that is where some of the best wines are from. And again, I ran into the wine blogs when I was researching this, so it's kind of interesting that both of them come from these areas. Now, he took his name, his D name, from La Chapelle, which means the church. So Marin Janot comes from La Chapelle Montreal, and that is how his name came to be. So Marin arrived with the Grand Recrues of 1653. These were people that were hired to come and save Montreal. And we will talk a little bit more about this when we get into the whole history of Montreal. But suffice it to say, he became one of the pioneers. And he is featured on the plaque in Montreal, being one of those pioneers. So this is how he arrived in 1653. By 1655, he and Françoise were married in Montreal, August 30th to be exact. Now, of course, they would settle at Montreal. Let's talk a little bit about Montreal, the wonderful city that would become this mega metropolis. Started off as a very small place called Ville-Marie by the founder, Paul de Chomedy, Sœur de Maisonneuve, and was essentially a missionary center. And it was founded in May of 1642. The colony would not thrive, and it was on the verge of extinction when Chomedy decided to return to France to recruit those 100 settlers, which would become known as the Grand Recrues. From this small group would evolve the Notre Dame Congregation from Sister Marguerite Bourgeois. And when Montreal was founded, the new colonists were rapidly confronted by a fierce enemy, the Iroquois. Unfortunately, there was no regular army on Montreal soil until 1665, when the Carignan-Seigneur regiment arrived here. In the meantime, militias capable of resisting Iroquois attacks were set up. On January 27, 1663, Chomedy de Maisonneuve created the Saint-Famille militia to protect the Ville-Marie and its inhabitants. It was made up of 139 volunteer colonists. So you can see why Montreal had such a hard time of it. And also, don't forget that the Trois-Rivières and Quebec City inhabitants thought of Montreal at that time and for many years as kind of a foolish concept, like who would go and live on an island? Really? Obviously, its location and its strategy, really a strategic location, would prove to be its greatest strength. But at the time, it was also its greatest weakness. So Françoise was not one to go gently into areas. She apparently physically assaulted the surgeon Etienne Bouchard in full view of the public on November 16th, on the 19th of November 1661. At her trial, the court found that Françoise was guilty and ordered her to pay the surgeon £25. She was also required to pay the same amount of money to the church. Françoise's husband, Marin, would have to purchase insurance costing 100 sous per year. I'm not really sure what sous means, and which would allow any settler in Ville-Marie to be treated by Surgeon Etienne Bouchard without charge. Françoise was a very feisty French fighting femme, but it appears her brawling days after this were over by the incident. However, by 1673, she got herself into more trouble and had to make restitution to the sheriff of Montreal. I suspect that she just didn't, my take, and maybe I'm being a Pollyanna, is that if she physically assaulted Etienne Bouchard, she had a reason for it. I just, that's what I think. And I think he probably said something to her and she just didn't take it. So I look upon it as a badge of honor. So to her descendants, bravo. Now, to make matters worse, Marin was captured by the Indians around 1661, but thankfully he was released. After his capture, I'm certain that Marin said, hey, I've got to support this cause. So by the time de Maisonneuve got the militia started, Marin ended up serving as a soldier in the 17th Squadron in 1663. So he was among those very early militia pioneers. So let's talk a little bit about the family they created. They ended up having 5 children. Cécile would marry André Carrière and have 3 children, all of whom made it to adulthood. Françoise would marry Antoine Bazinet and had 8 children, all of whom made it. Pierre married Pétronille Tissy and had 12 children, all of whom made it. Robert married Anne-Thérèse Langlois and had 4 children, all of whom made it. Anne's mother is the fille Marie Pontonnier, who we have not yet profiled, but will be doing so very, very soon. And little Jacques passed away at 3 months of age. So the unthinkable happens. Here is this brave man who has defended Montreal, done the Grand Reclus, has been captured by the Indians. July 20th, 1664, his body was found at Trois-Rivières, drowned. He was brought to Montreal and buried there. Just a tragic ending. So you can imagine that Françoise finds herself, with 4 children and to having to support. So let's have a look at what happens next. So the groom that would come into her life, his name was Guillaume Bouchard, and he was born in 1632 in Neuchâtel, Ardelot, and his parents were Laurent Bouchard and Nicole Bourguignon. He is from the Hauts-de-France region. Inside of that region, he's from the Pas-de-Calais département. I find it interesting to note that both her husbands are from the same area. Obviously not the same département, but I just find that interesting. I don't know why. It's a big place, France, in many respects, and how did she end up with 2 guys from the same region? So today the commune has about 3,800 people. So it's not a small little place. It's quite a touristy area, actually. Now the name Neuchâtel obviously means new castle. And it was named actually for the Château de Bellefontaine, which was, engulfed by the sand at one point. And the name Neuchâtel was actually recorded for the very first time in 1173. So this place has been around. The first castle at this place that was built in the 12th century was built for the Counts of Boulogne. And the present castle was built by Count Philippe Urepel of Clermont in 1222, and it was used as a summer home for many years for the Counts of Boulogne. The English king, Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, once lived in this castle. I just find that amazing. Now, the church built in this town comes from the 13th century and has been enlarged and expanded upon many times in the 16th and 19th century. You can see this is where that particular stretch of the Pas-de-Calais, if you look at it, it goes all the way to the sea, and that is the English Channel. So that is really as far north as you can see. And this is one of the reasons why it was such a strategic place. Actually, 1 year after the death of her husband, July 20th, 1664 is when he died. Her and Guillaume were married in 1665 at Montreal. I don't know if that's just a coincidence or just she wanted to mark that as the second phase of her life. They would go on to have 1 child of their own, Marie, who would marry Jean-Baptiste Griveaux, and have 3 children, one of whom would make it to adulthood. In 1667, we find Guillaume and Françoise there in Montreal, living with the children from her first marriage, Cécile, Françoise, Pierre, Robert, and then of course their little one was 1 month old. They have 1 head of cattle, and they have 15 alfamala, about 12 to 13 acres of land. In the 1681 census, we find Guillaume and Françoise. Pierre is still living with them. Robert, Marie is now 14. They have 1 Gagne, 2 bêtes à cornes, and 18 arpents valaires, which is about 15 to 16 acres of land. I also want to point out something I just recently learned. The bêtes à cornes, I always thought it was goats, but it's actually anything with a horn. So when they say, they're really counting the horn, anything with a horn. So it could be a bull or it could be a goat. I just assumed it was goats, but I was later taught by my BFF when she visited me recently that no, it could be anything. And I was like, anything with a horn. So, okay, I got it. So I wanted to share that new information I just learned. Marie would pass away in 1707. She was buried February 6th, 1707. She would have been 77 years old. We believe that Guillaume Bouchard had already died before the state, but we don't have any proof. They would have been married at least 40 years, depending on when he passed away. But that's just a remarkable achievement, especially for a second marriage. Now, she would leave among the two husbands 42 descendants as of 1729. Obviously, my viewer is one of those. I'm anxious to find out which of the family, so I didn't find out which one it was, but I don't remember actually. So please, my viewer who requested, please let me know in the comments below which one of her husbands you are descended from. And please let me know if anyone is descended from Guillaume as well. I'd be fascinated. So we're not finished with the story of Marin, Januel, ni La Chapelle. And obviously this plaque was put in the church at La Chapelle, Montreal. And so you can see it. And I've also put a link to the YouTube video that was filmed when they awarded this plaque. And of course, there is an association that you can join if this is your inheritance. And please, I put the notes for you to have a look as well. Further research. Les Filles du Roi Pionnières de Montréal is a fabulous, if you can read French, it's a fabulous report. And obviously, our girl is featured in there. The Women of Ville-Marie, fabulous English book and can be obtained on Amazon and is written by Susan McNally. Absolutely amazing book, and you need to read it in terms of understanding not only what Les Filles du Roi of Montreal lived through, but also women of that time. It's a fabulous read and one that I go back to again and again to just kind of get a feel for things. So have a look at that. Here are some of the resources I use when designing a Fille Marie episode. Obviously, Genealogie Québec. The French-Canadian Genealogist is an amazing site as well in terms of knowledge and information. Maple Stars and Stripes, a fabulous podcast that you need to listen to. I'm currently re-listening to a lot of them right now, so please have a listen to that. We have the American Canadian Genealogical Society. We have the French Canadian Heritage Society of Michigan, the American French Genealogical Society that has existed since 1978, and we have the Quebec Family History Society as well. All of these are amazing sites for you to have a look at and see if that would benefit you. I've put the links. We in the notes section. We have Genealogie du Québec et de Marie Françoise, a free site, and we have the Quebec Genealogical Society, another more of a new kid on the block, but I really like it in terms of its overreaching arc, and really it's basically was built to be a e-society, which means that it never is going to meet physically. It's always been built to have that virtual feel, and it really is a remarkable site. So have a look at that. What a life Françoise led. Just a remarkable woman who endured the loss of her first husband in such a tragic way. I mean, not only was he captured, but he was also drowned. I can't even imagine the strength and the just determination to survive that this lady must have had. So we want to thank her for this incredible gift of coming to New France and of making a life despite the hardships. And we are ever so grateful that she came to our shores. So thank you to Françoise, and we bless your memory. I also want to say thank you to my patrons and supporters. The list keeps growing. I so appreciate you and all of what you do for me. The letters, the emails, the support, obviously, but just I'm ever so grateful. So with that, I bid you adieu and au revoir until I see you on episode 63 of Les Filles Mariées.